From the WKYT studios in Lexington, this is Kentucky Newsmakers with Bill Bryant.
Good morning from WKYT News. A little bit later, the future of Centerpoint, now that new developers are taking over the long stalled out project. WKYT's Miranda Combs got the first interview with the UK law student and the founder of a real estate investment firm who say they have a plan. She'll join me later with some of that. But first, it is now a three-way race for Kentucky governor. Earlier this week, the owner of a website that highlights quirky news from around the world became an official independent candidate. For Drew Curtis, who holds an MBA from Columbia and some out-of-the-box ideas, it has already been a learning experience for him. The bar for becoming a nonpartisan candidate was much higher than it would have been if he'd declared himself as a Democrat or a Republican. Even before he entered the race, a WKYT Herald Leader Bluegrass poll showed Curtis pulling 8% support. Does he think he can win, or will Curtis be happy if he raises some issues and gets some ideas out there that might not have come forward without his candidacy? His running mate is his wife, Heather. Drew Curtis, now officially a candidate for governor, joining us. And thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Well, it now has to feel real to you to be a qualified candidate for governor. What has the reaction been out there?
It has been stunning. There have been many points in the campaign so far where I thought, okay, like surely now things are going to take off, and then nothing. But it kind of makes sense in retrospect. It would be hard for people to get excited and back my candidacy if there was no shot of me getting on the ballot. But then on Monday we filed, and all of a sudden the floodgates open, and it's been just stunning, the reaction. I'm amazed, and I'm humbled.
Let's talk about even an independent candidate just filing for governor. It was more difficult for you than had you been a partisan candidate, right?
Yeah, it was very difficult. In fact, the laws around filing as an independent candidate are pretty strict. And they say that the reason why is to keep, people who aren't qualified off of the ballot, but the real reason is to make sure that nobody who isn't in either party gets on. For example, if I had chosen a party, I would need 2 signatures to get on the ballot. I would have had to go through a primary, but but in order to get on as an independent, you need 5,000 signatures, and you don't get to do it over if you miss. So if I turn in 5,000 and 100 don't qualify, go get another 5,000. So they make it really, really hard. The only solution there was, okay, fine, if that's the danger zone, then I'm going to turn in 10. And that's what we did. We turned in 10,000 signatures.
How do you feel about the state government basically setting policy that directs people to be a member of one of the major parties?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the parties were never envisioned in the Constitution. They're not even mentioned in it. And in fact, George Washington gave 2 paragraphs in his farewell address to the Union, which I encourage everybody to read, where he says basically, guys, these parties that we never envisioned 8 years ago, as I'm on my way out, are going to destroy the nation, and here's how. And then he ran off a list of all of the things they have since done, and he's been proven right. And that was over 200 years ago. So I actually find the political parties are more like parasites on the system. This wasn't part of the idea of government. Government was supposed to be individual citizens like myself who are not politicians, stepping up, doing the job for a few years as a civil servant, and then exiting and going back to their lives. And that's how it was originally intended. And hopefully we can get back to that.
Mr. Curtis, are you in this race to win, or will you be satisfied if you just change or adjust the dialogue in this campaign?
I am in it to win it. And the reason why is because initially it seemed like a good idea, but then being an entrepreneur, I was like, okay, so what are the big issues facing Kentucky? So I looked into it, and I discovered that the unfunded pension system that we have is going to bankrupt the entire state in 2018, which is sort of a problem since I live here. And the other candidates either are unaware of the problem or don't have a viable solution to fix this thing. And so it's gotten to the point now where if I don't win, we're in big trouble. So that sort of changed my urgency on this, from this being this is a good idea to I actually have to do this. And then in the process of doing more research on all the other problems, I've been coming up with more and more sort of unusual, not strange or experimental, but solutions that solve problems in ways people haven't thought of before.
Well, on that issue, a major one, as you said, woefully underfunded pension funds in the state.
Right.
How do you get at that?
Yeah, so the problem is that we currently have a 15% funding level, and it's dropping. And the reason why is because, and by the way, there is absolutely no other excuse for this, the government stopped paying into the pension system in 2003. It was the Fletcher administration, and for 4 years they didn't pay anything in. And then Bashir picked up the ball and ran with it and didn't pay anything in until just this year. And so the pension system went from 100% funded to 15%. And the problem is that leaves you very little wiggle room in order to maneuver, because if you stop sending out the pension checks, that kills the state economy by about 4%. So instant recession immediately, and mostly centered in central Kentucky. So the way you fix it, and as a theory, is that there have been ideas floated saying, well, we need to borrow the money, which nobody wants to do. It's not actually new debt. We owe this. My idea is that there are some scenarios under which the pension fund does better than you would expect, and it's really depending on market forces. So take a bond out, structure it as a line of credit, and only tap it as needed to maintain a 4% growth rate in the fund for the next 35 years. If you come in over 4%, you pay the line of credit down. If you come in under the 4%, you tap it, and that way you create minimal interest expense and hold on for 35 years. Checks always go out. We get back to 100% thanks to compound interest.
You think a solution
Sorry.
like that would work?
Yeah, actually.
You think that would pass in Frankfurt?
I mean, nobody else has a solution. So, yeah, I mean, it's also nonpartisan. I think saving the state economy is something everybody can kind of get behind. So.
All right. Are we in a time now where voters out there are looking for out-of-the-box ideas? You know, you have Donald Trump running on the Republican side and leading in the polls, and you have something you've been saying about him, I think, out on the campaign trail as well.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Trump is doing something really interesting. He started putting a voice to all of the frustration that we all have about the quality of the candidates. I think the parties have become very complacent in putting up essentially Disney-fied political candidates with no substance and no style, relying on the fact that if you run as a Democrat, you've got 40% of the vote, and you just need to scare everybody else into getting the other 10. And they've sort of relied on all tricks, like, you know, Obama will take your guns, and, you know, the Republicans are going to shut down Planned Parenthood, and all of these hedge issues. We are going bankrupt in 2018. This is actually the big issue here. And nobody wants to talk about it. I honestly don't think they even understand the problem. And we're all fed up with this, all of us across the United States, and I think you're starting to see the ramifications that's occurring on both sides. You're seeing Trump starting to surge on the GOP side because people are saying, I don't care about what he says, nobody's in control of this guy. And then you see Sanders on the other side, who was an independent, running as a Democrat, same thing. People backing him say, I like him because nobody's in control of this guy. And that's what we need, is basically somebody who can come in and make a decision based on not theory, but really fact. Like, is this a good idea or not? I need to see the implementation before I can make the call.
Do you see opportunity for growth in your support out there if the two major party candidates start attacking each other and spending a lot of their energy going after each other, as so far they have done?
Yeah, it's already happening. When we were collecting signatures for the ballot, there were multiple people who came up, especially at the July 4th parade in Lexington, wearing Conway or Bevin stickers, who came up to sign the ballot saying, I'm signing the ballot because I think my candidate is weak and I'm afraid the other guy will win. And both sides were telling me that. And if you look at the way that the race went out, 25% of people lodged a protest vote against Jack Conway. Who voted? 72% of Republicans did vote for somebody else, and the turnout was only 12%, which means if 5% of Kentuckians show up and vote for me, I already blow this thing wide open. And that's not going to take much, because everybody who's voting for me is coming. All the party guys are going to have to struggle to keep people interested in their candidate.
Let's talk some issues. Medicaid expansion is something that Governor Steve Beshear opted to do. The state of Kentucky will have to pick up some of the cost of that, additional cost of that, beginning in a couple of years. On the Republican side, they're saying we can't afford that. Governor Beshear and his forces say that the numbers work.
Sure. So what Beshear is referring to is there was a study done by Deloitte, or a projection basically, to see could the state afford it. We're looking at, and again, this is just numbers that I'm coming up with using Google, so these may not be correct, but it's looking like we need to pay about $75 million in 2017 to meet the 5% mandate. Based on what I'm seeing in the economy due to the uplift in people actually receiving health care, that money is being taxed, and those revenues are coming in at a rate that I think should cover it. So I think we're good in 2017. The question is that it doubles in 2020. And can we pay for it then? And the projection says yes, but that is a projection, so I'm going to reserve judgment. But as far as I'm concerned, the thing we should do is the thing that works, which might be, okay, this pays for itself, we'll keep it. Or might be, Texas came up with a better idea in 2018, and it's doing great. Okay, well, can we transition off of that without it spending a lot of money or disrupting people's lives? And that's really going to be the decision. It's not really a policy issue. Does it work or does it not work? The end.
Do you think too many politicians don't don't change their mind often enough when they get new information?
Yeah, well, and they also can't. I mean, take right to work, for example. It's like you're not going to have a Republican ever come out against right to work, and you're not going to have a Democrat ever come out for it. Well, it is either a good idea or not a good idea. And the problem is that thanks to people checking their donor list before they make a decision, as opposed to looking into the problem, we have people making decisions that are not to the benefit of the general public, and party people cannot do that. Only I can.
Will it be a difficult thing for you to raise money if you're not moving your stands around to chase the money?
Right. Yeah. Oh, actually, it's been impossible. Most of the campaign money that comes in is basically buying somebody's vote. And I've already gone on record saying you cannot buy my vote. So not surprisingly, I'm not getting a ton of, secret coal debate money from Virginia, for example, or anywhere else. But what I've been trying to encourage people is this. Larry Lessig, who just entered the presidential race yesterday, which I was emailing him Monday, and he forgot to mention that, has an idea about campaign funding, which is essentially if every person who is going to vote gave a candidate $5, that amount of money in the aggregate would be so large that influence money would be drowned out. And that's all it would take. But the problem is that we've all been conditioned that we can't make a difference, or that $5 is too little, or whatever. And so basically at this point, I'm going to work with the Army I have, and I'll make it one way or the other, but it would be a lot easier with a lot more money.
How do you approach public education in Kentucky? We have improvements in some areas, and we can see that. Deep challenges remain, obviously. Many people say the better the education in the state, the better your economy would be.
Yeah.
Do we fund education at the correct level, or are we wasting money, or how would you approach it?
Yeah, well, so throwing money at a solution is an easy way to do it, and I prefer to approach these things with a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer. And the idea basically is this. We're very reluctant to throw regulations on businesses to tell them how to run their business, but for some reason teachers are fair game. We tell them how to do everything. So I've started by talking to teachers and saying, so you have, for example, a ton of reporting requirements that you're pretty sure nobody's actually looking at on the other end. So what are these, and can we remove them? How can we make your lives easier? Because their lives are filled with hundreds of thousands of little mini tiny regulations that they must follow. And if you're a good teacher, this doesn't help you be a good teacher. And so I'm talking to them about what little things can we take out in order to make your lives easier. On the other side of it, job training actually is of paramount importance. And I'm a big fan of, if you can find something that works, copy it. And in particular, in Central Kentucky, we have a program that works. The mayors of Lexington and Louisville put together a job training program with corporations and the community colleges in order to provide necessary skills. It currently is a program that exists across 22 counties, and I think that could be extended across the entire state, and should be.
Do you support giving local governments the right to levy a local sales tax for a limited period of time for a specific project if the local voters agree to it?
I would have to look at the specifics on that, but that all sounds fine.
And that is a constitutional amendment that's been proposed, the LIFT proposal.
Yeah,
all right.
Exactly.
Our border states have statewide smoking bans for indoor public places. Kentucky does not. Your thought on that is that has been a push in the legislature.
Yeah, so in general, I think it's a good idea. I had a little bit of a problem with Lexington's in particular because I like a cigar once in a while, and now I can't smoke it anywhere other than outside. And the problem is that, so if you have a cigar bar, right, nobody walks into a cigar bar and goes, oh my God, they're smoking in here. I can't believe this. I would like to see a statewide smoking ban that allows a carve out for businesses like that to continue to exist in some way. And again, the implementation needs to be, brought to me so I can see it. But I would copy something done in another state, specifically one that allows that, and then we can go from there.
How should voters take into consideration the choice of your wife as your running mate? What should that signal to them, if anything?
It's been weird because people have been having strange reactions to that, and I'm confused by it. I'm starting to think that maybe people don't have really good marriages compared to mine. What they should know about Heather is that she's been my COO of my digital media business for the last 16 years. She is really smart, and anybody who knows her, who I told when I was picking her as my running mate, said that is the best idea ever. And in fact, I've been asked before, like, well, in that case, should the ticket be flipped? And I said, maybe in this race, all of them should be.
Well, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it very much. Drew Curtis, and we'll be following you along the way. All right?
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. We're coming back in just a moment on Kentucky Newsmakers. Miranda Combs talks about the future of Centerpoint. The developers, we'll hear from them as well. The new developers coming up. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers on WKYT. It has been a question for years now. What is going on at Center Point? And what eventually will happen in that big hole right in the middle of downtown Lexington that used to be a block of buildings? WKYT's Miranda Combs got an exclusive TV interview with the two who have stepped forward to take on the project that has long been stalled out. And she's joining me now to tell us about that and show us some of that interview as well. Miranda, thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Who are these new developers who say they can save Center Point?
We were talking a minute ago about the fact we walked into this conference room and there was some of the mayor's staff and there's these two relatively young guys there, and it took us a while to figure out, so it's you guys? And they said yes. So one guy's name is Matt Collins. He's a law student at UK. And then Atit Al-Jawari, he is the founder of Bridgeton Holdings Properties, which is a firm out of New York and St. Louis. So they're the two that have come together to try to get this deal done.
So in their young lives, they have some experience and they seem to have a vision, right?
They do, and the vision isn't different than the initial vision of Center Point. They say that's the way that they can make money. That setup is how they can make the most economic impact into the community. So they want to keep it the same, but yet they made it very clear that they have all the authority moving forward to make changes.
And that means a multi-use development.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
How did they get interested in completing this massive project?
Well, the UK law student Matt Collins says he was just driving through Lexington and would see this hole. At the same time, his father, Tim Collins, who's apparently a billionaire who was born in Frankfurt, grew up in Frankfurt, and now is in New York, he had office space that was with Bridgeton Holdings Properties, and I guess all of the people just got to talking about it and what they could do down there, and it kind of went from there.
So Matt didn't grow up here, but he came back here to go to law school.
Sounds like it, yes.
Yeah, all right. So tell us a little bit about your interview, and then we'll see a little bit of it.
Okay, well, you know, we sat down, and at first it took a while to figure out who's who and how are these players and how does everything work and where do the webs play and all of this. So once we got that taken care of, they needed to catch a flight. So we had limited time, about 10 minutes with them, but I think we got enough information to at least get people excited about what's possibly to come.
Well, let's see a little bit from the new developers of Center Point.
I moved here, 2 years ago. Drove through the center of downtown and saw a hole, and started to ask some questions and figure it out and try to see if there was a role for us to play. Look, having a hole in the center of downtown is not just aesthetically a blight, but it's an economic blight, and we are incredibly excited and privileged to have the opportunity to invest in Lexington and make a difference in downtown. So our vision of this project is this will be a catalyst for a renaissance of downtown Lexington. The goal is to have a mixed-use development that puts downtown Lexington over the threshold, creates the right amount of density, and provides the right opportunity for a snowball effect.
What makes your promises different?
Well, I think the big difference is we're not making promises. We are really optimistic we can get this project done. There are still a lot of unknowns. It's early days yet, but we think that we can put all the pieces together. I mean, it's going to take a lot from a lot of different actors, but we're confident we can get it done.
What will the Webb's role be in this now?
Webbs have a super minority economic stake in the project.
So it's mainly.
So we are calling the shots. We have all the control going forward, and a large financial stake obviously as well.
So I grew up in St. Louis. My family managed in Econo Lodge Motel where I grew up. I lived my first few years of my life. So I've grown up cleaning rooms, running the front desk, kind of working in real estate, which is what got me into real estate. I went to undergrad. I went to Yale. Out of undergrad, I did investment banking focused on real estate. I eventually joined a real estate private equity firm. Then I went to business school out in California at Stanford, and where I started, right before that I started this company, Bridgeton. We own, operate 60 properties across the country, of about a dozen properties that are under development right now, 5 in active development, 3 in active construction. And you know, what's exciting about this project in Lexington is that, you know, unlike my other development projects, really can't make a true ongoing catalytic impact for a very long term, which this can, which makes it very exciting to us, you know, and you know, for it to be a long-term asset to the community and to be able to benefit the entire community is pretty exciting, given all the great things happening in this town.
What does the timeline look like for this?
Yeah, I mean, you know, our goal is that within 6 months or so we'll have cranes moving, and that's our hope.
There's a lot of work that's been done that we can piggyback off of. That being said, you know, we're retaining the ability to change what parts we think need to be changed, and you know, the goal is to make this really impactful, and we're going to do everything we can to ensure that. So if some of the parts need to be, you know, rejiggered, you know, great, but we are sticking with the original model. This is going to be, you know, a multi-component mixed-use development, because that's the only way you get that bang.
Very interesting interview, and Miranda, I was struck by Matt Collins saying that we're not making promises, and that, as you said earlier, they do want to stay with this mixed-use development concept, but does it seem they want to use the Webb Company's plans, which of course have morphed from the huge skyscraper that was introduced in 2008 through a couple of different phases? They do, but I think it goes back to the fact that this is very early on for them, and you know, you'd notice them in the interview looking at each other, making sure they were saying what needed to be said at that point. So I think it all goes back to, you know, we caught them at a time when maybe they weren't quite ready to discuss this, and I think it comes back to a lot of that. But were they excited to get the word out? I think so. Yeah, they seemed excited and they're confident, but I think there's so many moving parts at this point that it's hard to say for sure. Well, one of those is the proposal to have City Hall as part of the project. And Mayor Gray has said that the current government center shows its age. We know that it has trouble. It leaks occasionally. There was that smoky fire back last winter when one of those snowstorms came through. What would have to come together for the government center to be a part of this overall project? A lot. And I talked to the mayor's office again yesterday just to get any follow-up questions done, and they say, you know, of course Mayor Gray has said the council has to be on board with this, the taxpayers have to be on board, but it's so early in the game. And again, another situation separately with so many moving parts. Who's going to buy the government center? I mean, we're back to those basic questions that have to be taken care of before they can even think about moving forward with that. Jeff Ruby continues to indicate he wants to build a steakhouse in Lexington somewhere. Is he on board with this new plan? He's told WKYT that he will open downtown. But the interesting thing is, if it's going to be with Centerpoint, it's going to be a while. As we've noticed from that interview, they're nowhere near being even starting on this. So if it's going to be with Centerpoint, it's going to be a while, and I don't know if that's in his interest. One of the time frames we heard, it was 6 months to get the cranes moving. Did that seem to be hard and fast, or is that a goal out there on the horizon? It almost seemed like something they just said right then and there. Yeah. They looked at each other, they looked across the table and said, 6 months, we'd like to get to see the cranes moving at that point. So again, there's a lot of, as he said, actors to play a part in this, and things to get moving. So, but as we were discussing before the show started, they've had 6 months of planning before this, so it's curious as to what's been going on behind the scenes. All right, a story that will roll out slowly. Stay with us on WKYT in just a moment. We're going to talk to Miranda just a little bit about the importance of digging a little deeper on stories. Coming up on WKYT Kentucky Newsmakers.